Thousands of men, trained soldiers of the Eastern Roman Empire, were being pushed off the cliffs of the Yarmouk River. Their screams echoed across the gorge. Behind them, a force half their size closed in with terrifying precision. This was not supposed to happen. The most powerful empire on Earth had come to crush a desert rebellion. Instead, it was being destroyed. This is the Battle of Yarmouk, 636 AD. And by the time it was over, the entire map of the known world had changed forever. Welcome to General History Class, the channel where history is not just told, it is understood. If you love stories of empires, battles, and the commanders who shaped civilizations, subscribe now, hit the like button, and share this video with someone who loves history. Now, let us go back to where it all began. To understand Yarmouk, you must first understand what came before it. For over 2 decades, the Byzantine Empire and the Sassanid Persian Empire had been locked in one of the most devastating wars of the ancient world. By the time Emperor Heraclius finally secured victory over the Persians in 628 AD, his empire was financially drained, militarily exhausted, and administratively stretched thin. According to the historian Walter Kaigi in his study Byzantium and the early Islamic conquests, the empire's frontier defenses in Syria had deteriorated significantly during this period. Meanwhile, something unprecedented was happening in the Arabian Peninsula. Under the banner of Islam, the scattered tribes of Arabia had unified into a single political and military force, the Rashidun Caliphate. By 634 AD, Muslim armies had begun probing into Byzantine-held Syria, winning engagements at Ajnadain and Fal. Emperor Heraclius recognized the threat. He began assembling the largest army he could muster to drive the Arabs out of Syria permanently. The historian Al-Tabari records that the Byzantine force numbered between 80,000 and 200,000, though modern scholars like David Nicole estimate a more realistic figure of around 40,000 to 60,000 men. The Muslim army, commanded by several generals, numbered roughly 25,000 to 30,000. On paper, this should have been a decisive Roman victory. The Byzantine army was placed under the overall command of Vahan, an Armenian general. But Vahan's authority was undermined from the start. According to al-Waqidi's Kitab al-Maghazi, and later accounts compiled by al-Azdi, the Byzantine command structure was fractured. Multiple generals, including Theodore Tritherius and Jabala ibn al-Ayham, the Ghassanid Arab Christian king, each controlled their own contingents and often disagreed on strategy. This internal rivalry would prove fatal. On the Muslim side, Caliph Umar ibn al-Khattab made a decisive command change. He appointed Khalid Ibn Al-Walid as the unified field commander. Khalid, already known as the Sword of Allah, had an undefeated record. More importantly, he understood something that separated great generals from ordinary ones. Terrain dictates tactics, not the other way around. Khalid deliberately withdrew Muslim forces from Damascus and consolidated them on the Yarmouk plains, east of the Sea of Galilee. He chose this ground carefully. The plains were bordered by deep ravines and the Yarmouk River Gorge. For a mobile army, this terrain offered space to maneuver. For a large, heavy force, like the Byzantines, it was a cage with invisible walls. At this point, with the Byzantines outnumbering the Muslims nearly 2 to 1, who do you think had the real advantage? Drop your answer in the comments, and let us see how the battle actually unfolded. The Battle of Yarmouk lasted 6 days, from August 15th to August 20th, 636 AD. The first 4 days followed a pattern. Vahan would launch massive frontal assaults, relying on his numerical superiority and the weight of his heavy cataphract cavalry. Each day, the Muslim lines bent under the pressure. On multiple occasions, the Arab flanks collapsed, and soldiers retreated toward their camp. What happened next became one of the most remarkable episodes of the battle. According to Al-Waqidi and later historians like Ibn Kathir, the women in the Muslim camp, including Hind bint Utbah and Asma bint Abi Bakr, armed themselves with tent poles and stones and confronted the retreating soldiers, shaming them back into the fight. This was not legend or embellishment for morale. Multiple independent sources confirm that the women's intervention stabilized the Muslim lines on at least 2 occasions. Day 4 became known as the Day of Lost Eyes. The Byzantine archers unleashed concentrated volleys that blinded numerous Muslim soldiers. The fighting was so intense and close that the historian Al-Tabari describes soldiers grappling hand to hand, unable to swing their swords. Yet Khalid's mobile cavalry reserve, a force of roughly 8,000 horsemen he kept separate from the main line, repeatedly struck the Byzantine flanks at critical moments, preventing any breakthrough from becoming permanent. Throughout these 4 days, Khalid was studying Vahan's patterns. He noticed that the Byzantine cavalry always operated on the flanks, disconnected from the infantry center. He noticed that the Roman heavy cavalry, once committed, was slow to reposition. And he noticed something else. The bridge over the Wadi al-Rukad, behind the Byzantine lines, was their only viable escape route. On the night before the 6th day, Vahan requested a truce. Khalid rejected it. According to A.I. Akram's detailed military analysis, the Sword of Allah, Khalid recognized the request for what it was: a sign of deteriorating Byzantine morale and an attempt to buy time for reinforcements or retreat. That night, Khalid executed the maneuver that would define the battle. He dispatched a cavalry detachment under Dara ibn al-Azwar to seize the bridge of Rukad behind the Byzantine army. They moved under darkness, overwhelmed the small guard, and blocked the only exit. The trap was set. At dawn on August 20th, Khalid reorganized his entire force. He massed his cavalry into a single concentrated strike force and launched a coordinated assault. The Muslim infantry pinned the Byzantine center in place, while Khalid's cavalry swept around and destroyed the Byzantine cavalry on the flanks. With their mounted protection gone, the Roman infantry was exposed. What followed was catastrophic. According to the 9th century historian Al-Baladuri in Futu al-Buldan, the Byzantine army, unable to retreat across the bridge, was compressed against the ravines of the Yarmouk gorge. Panic spread through the ranks. Thousands of soldiers were pushed, or threw themselves, over the cliffs in desperation. Al-Waqidi describes the scene as producing sounds that haunted the survivors for years. The Byzantine army did not merely lose. It disintegrated. Estimates suggest that between 30,000 and 50,000 Byzantine soldiers perished, many from the fall itself rather than combat. If this breakdown is giving you a new perspective on one of history's most important battles, take a second to hit the like button. It helps this channel grow and brings more content like this to your feed. The consequences of Yarmouk were immediate and irreversible. Within 2 years, the entire Levant, including Jerusalem, Antioch, and Damascus, fell under Muslim control. The Byzantine Empire would never recover these territories. According to the historian Hugh Kennedy in The Great Arab Conquests, Yarmouk was the single most consequential military engagement in the entire history of the early Islamic expansion. Emperor Heraclius, upon receiving news of the defeat, reportedly stood on the border of Syria and said, as recorded by Al-Baladuri, "Farewell, Syria, my fair province. You are now the enemy's." It not just the loss of territory. It was the loss of revenue, population, and strategic depth that had sustained the empire for centuries. The emotional weight of that moment, an emperor saying goodbye to a province his empire had held for over 600 years, captures the magnitude of what Yarmouk meant. For the Muslim forces, the victory confirmed something profound. A smaller army, unified under a single command, driven by conviction, and led by arguably the greatest tactical mind of the 7th century, had broken the military backbone of a superpower. Khalid Ibn Al-Walid's use of terrain, his patience over 6 days, his refusal to grant a truce when he sensed weakness, and his ruthless decision to cut off the enemy's retreat. These decisions collectively represent one of the most complete victories in military history. The Battle of Yarmouk teaches us something that extends beyond the 7th century. Numerical superiority does not guarantee victory. Internal division, the mistrust between Vahan, Theodore, and Jabala, cost the Byzantines more than any cavalry charge. Unity of command, clarity of purpose, and the ability to read the battlefield gave Khalid's smaller force an advantage that no amount of Roman gold or armor could overcome. Yarmouk reminds us that empires do not fall from external pressure alone. They fall when their internal structures, their leadership, their cohesion, their willingness to adapt, have already cracked. The Arabs did not defeat Rome. At Yarmouk, Rome's fractures defeated Rome. Khalid simply knew exactly where to apply the pressure. This has been General History Class. If this video gave you a deeper understanding of one of history's turning points, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. History is not just about the past. It is the blueprint for understanding the present. Till next time.